Hey, hey, movie maniacs! My name is Sky, and I'm joined by my brother Dusty. Dust, last week when you said Tombstone and it was full of a ton of famous actors, I thought to myself at the time, oh, well, there's Kurt Russell and there's Val Kilmer. Who else was in it? But then watching it again, oh my gosh, Michael Biehn, Michael Rooker, Charlton Heston, Dana Delaney, Billy Zane! This movie blew me away with how many famous actors were in it.
I agree. And so for everybody watching this on YouTube, you can totally see Sky and I have some props. I definitely have my cowboy hat, my black cowboy hat props. And you know what's funny? When I went to Fresno in Christmas time, I've been wearing, well, before this, I've been wearing boots. I bought some boots, some cowboy boots a while ago, maybe about, I don't know, 8 months ago. And so I've been wearing them. And I get to California, and those are the only thing I either bring flip flops or boots. Or some running shoes. I think I've been throwing running.
Flip
But
flops or boots.
yeah, flip flops or boots. But I wear them to your house. You're like, hey, dude, what are you wearing boots for? I'm like, they're actually pretty fun. They're comfortable. They feel really good, and I like them. And it actually is. In the summer, it's going to get hot because wearing pants. I'd rather just wear flip flops. But yeah, so I got my cowboy hat. I didn't wear my cowboy hat, when we were in Fresno visiting you. But I figure, hey, this is a great time to pull out the cowboy hat. But there are so many amazing actors in this movie, and there's so many great things that we can learn about this. Not necessarily like lessons, because there were tons of lessons, but so many things about the movie that after I watched it, I did some research and started looking at trivia and like things that happened. It's pretty amazing, everything about this movie.
Yeah, for sure it was, man. And well, speaking about that, trivia and stuff about what happened. Um, uh, a few times in the movie, you see people spitting. They're doing chewing tobacco and they're spitting and stuff. I read a book that the book took place in 1880, and they talked about how disgusting the floors in saloons and bars and even in wagons really were because people were total, not people, men were total, just about every man was doing chewing tobacco, spitting everywhere. There were spittoons. Sure, you would aim for the spittoon, but oftentimes you would miss. Your boots would get spit on from other people. You'd walk on just spit covered floors. Man, so they didn't show how disgusting that was in this movie, but a few times when I saw like Ike spitting into a spittoon, I thought to myself, ugh, those are some pretty gross floors, man.
Because when you're spitting, you can have it, and I bet you get better and better as you get more aim. You can get better and better, but even if you have a good spit, there's a trail. Like it's not just one ball that hits if you hit perfectly. It's a trail and it drips. And so I could absolutely see that. But if there's no spittoon, you're just spitting right in the middle of nowhere, inside the or not middle of nowhere, inside the room wherever you're playing poker or whatever, just all over the ground. I could totally see that as well. So as I'm watching this movie, I think I've probably seen this, I want to say maybe a dozen times. This is
Mm.
up there with one of my favorite movies. What do you think?
This is up there. It's not one of my favorites, but if I just think about just westerns, this is probably my favorite western. I can't right off the top of my head think of a better western I would rather watch than this one. What about you?
I think out of all the westerns, this is probably my favorite. I can't think of a better western. It does rank up there for me. Like I love Braveheart. Braveheart's another fantastic movie, and so this ranks up there with them. But as I watch it again, I just really realize how awesome Val Kilmer is. Like the way he portrayed Doc Holliday was phenomenal. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And the story arc, the everything about the story. Now there are things that probably they embellished. Obviously, it's Hollywood; they embellished some things. Other things they didn't, and so we can get into that. But I really enjoy this, and I could not think of any better actors for these parts because it was such a good movie. Now, what was interesting, Val Kilmer, he's like one of the best actors ever. With him playing Doc Holliday, they actually considered Willem Dafoe. Do you know who that is?
Yes, of course I know Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, they actually considered him, or they wanted him. The director did, but the movie company, said no. He was in a really controversial movie. I have no idea. It was something about Jesus or something, like something sacrilegious, and so they didn't like that. They didn't want him to be in the movie, so they cast Val Kilmer instead. Not saying that Willem Dafoe would do a horrible job or be horrible or anything, but man, Val Kilmer was just brilliant in this movie. But all the lines that are in this movie is so much fun, like quotable. Like I'm your Huckleberry, everybody remembers that one. That was the easiest one to remember. But other ones like, well, Ed, if you weren't my friend, I don't just something I don't think I could bear. I was like, things like
Yeah.
that. And, well, you're a daisy if you do. Yeah. He does so many lines that are fantastic. I think if it was, I think Kurt Russell, fantastic White Earp. But if it wasn't for Doc Holliday, it wouldn't be the same movie. What do you think?
I agree with you 100%. Willem Dafoe, always a great actor, great in every role, but who knows if he could have been as iconic or as memorable or as impactful as Val Kilmer was in this one. So I agree with you there 100%. I totally forgot that Bill Paxton was in this movie as Morgan Earp, and then Sam Elliott, he's great too. You always love seeing him. Virgil Earp in this one, that was pretty cool seeing those two actors, two of my favorite. Like they're never, I shouldn't say never, they're not often leading men, but anytime you see them in a movie, they're always fun to watch. Really charismatic guys, and like you had already mentioned, Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer are great, but then all the supporting cast was incredible in this one. Michael Biehn as Ringo, holy cow, dude, he is such a dreadful guy. Powers Booth as Curly Bill, man, I absolutely love this movie. The acting was great, and everybody had really juicy roles, right? Even Stephen Lang as Ike, like he was kind of like a pathetic, kind of like a bully. You can easily kick him around, but he's still a really bad guy. Really good role for Stephen Lang, I thought.
And I remember when Avatar came out, I didn't even
Yeah.
realize that that guy was the same guy in Tombstone. You told me, oh man, he was pretty good in Tombstone too. I'm like, what? He was in
Yeah.
Tombstone? Yeah, he was like, what? How in the world?
Yeah.
And so yeah, and so I'm looking, okay, but Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton, Powers Booth was terrific. He was great in that position. Michael Biehn, Charlton Heston was in it. Jason Priestley, John Tenney, Stephen Lang, Thomas. I can't remember his last name. It's not
Hayden
showing up.
Church.
Yes, there you go. There was also, oh, it's not pulling up, but and so many other great actors. Like even the narrator, he was an old West guy. You could hear his voice. You could definitely hear him. Michael Rooker. Did you mention Michael Rooker?
Yes.
Yes, Michael Rooker's in it, and we obviously remember him being Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy. Really, Billy Bob Thornton is in this, almost like a cameo. Let's see who else we have.
Terry
Billy
O'Quinn,
Zane,
Billy Zane, like you said.
John Corbett's in it as well. It's like a phenomenal list of actors and actresses that are in here. Even Frank Stallone is in there. Yeah, it's just phenomenal, the cast that they have. And I love the casting of the main actors, even the bad guys. The main bad guys are fantastic. The main good guys are fantastic. So just all around, just like, wow, how can you get a better cast? And it was perfectly cast.
100% perfectly cast. And one thing interesting, you said earlier you learned some stuff about the movie, outside of watching the movie. One thing I learned was that George Cosmatos was the director, the credited director. He also directed Cobra, one of the best Sylvester Stallone movies ever. Love Cobra. But I guess he was hired as the director to be the yes man to Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell actually, and he admitted it years after George Cosmatos died. He admitted to being the director. George Cosmatos was basically his yes man. Before shooting, he would tell him exactly what he wanted. So George was on set director, but Kurt Russell told him everything to do. And I thought that was a pretty interesting idea, that this main actor in every single scene of the movie was also the one doing all the directing too. Double duty right there. I'm sure he got no sleep, all the work. But I guess Val Kilmer in a later interview said that the success of this movie just came down 100% to Kurt Russell and his leading, taking helm of the movie.
It is rather interesting to hear that. Now, I kind of thought that he actually got the main director did he get fired? Was he on the whole entire time?
I think I think they had a director. They fired him. They hired George Cosmatos so that, yeah, because he was a yes man basically. And I guess they agreed ahead of time. Kurt Russell and him said, "We're going to hire you. We're going to pay you, but I'm the director, buddy. I'm going to tell you what to do." So I think it was a whole whatever, a secret arrangement, I guess you could call it.
Well, which is great. And I remember hearing the Val Kilmer that he stated that as well. Like it would not be the same movie if it wasn't for Kurt Russell. And Kurt Russell's a brilliant actor. I mean, shoot, Tango and Cash. What? He was awesome in that. So another one, Sylvester Stallone. So throughout this entire
That's a
movie, it's
movie we need to do. I'm going to make a note of that. Tango and
Tango
Cash.
and
Like
Cash.
seriously, it is
Yes.
a it's a super fun movie. It probably not a good movie, but definitely worth watching. And I think you and I could probably learn a lot of lessons from it.
That, and it's definitely a '90s movie. Like you could, it's a
Yeah.
feel of '90s movie. You know, or good guy, bad guy, and yeah, I really love that movie. Really, really
Mhm.
fun. Actually, what might be interesting is we go back and watch it, be like, huh, it's not as good as we thought. Like nostalgia, it
Yeah,
was
I
really, really good.
know.
So going through Tombstone, I now that I live in Phoenix, I've actually been to Tombstone. Looks nothing like it. They tried to make it a little, still a little old timey, but it doesn't have that feel. You know, it's okay. It's not
Wait,
bad. I've
was
seen better.
do people live in Tombstone or is it strictly a tourist attraction?
No, they're it's basically a town, and
Oh,
the tourist is basically one street, and they have some newer buildings built up, and so it's pretty good. I mean, it's not bad. I've seen other ones that are a little more. It's like they had the town and they built out outside of it, like homes and stuff like that, and they just kept one little section of it, that a main
mm,
street that's maybe about half a mile long, and they try to keep it older and have trinkets and ropes you
rustic
could buy,
looking and
rusket. Yeah, yeah. So it's
mhm.
it's fun, but in my opinion, it's not. If you're gonna drive like 100 to no 100 miles might be okay to just check out, but if you're gonna drive like 600 miles to see it, no, you could pass. In my opinion, you,
Mm.
you definitely can pass. But what was really interesting, as I'm watching the movie, I'm looking at the scenery all around. They're showing hills or mountains in the background. When Kurt Russell and Dana Delaney, they're riding the horses, they're in the mountains. I'm like, dude, this is desert. It's flat. But I realize, no, there's actually mountains all around. If you look, we're actually in a valley. Phoenix is in a valley. Tombstone is more south of us, so you have to drive a good ways. But there are desert mountains that are all over the place. Now they weren't. Uh, there are like the where they were actually running the horses. That's much more north, at least as far as I can tell from Tombstone. But long story short, it was interesting to see that the terrain they actually did film in like Phoenix or like the Arizona desert. They actually did film it and stuff like that. And what I also got was that a lot of the extras are literally just people who are I can't remember what they call them. They're not cowboys, but they're called like buckaroos. Or they literally have all the get up. They have the guns. They have the clothing. They're just think of like Civil War reenactment people. Same thing for cowboys. There are buckaroos, and they just showed up. They brought their tents. They slept in tents, and they showed up on the day with their own gear, their own everything, and they
Wow.
were parts of it. So that was really really fun to hear too.
That is interesting, man. I had no idea. Yeah, like Civil War reenactors and stuff. People that are just into that time period. They kind of wish they lived back in the 1800s, that kind of thing. Um, as I was watching this movie, I knew where it was going. I knew that the Earps came to town with hopes of just making a fortune, making money, living a regular life. And I knew that eventually they would turn back to the law and then get into a giant, kerfuffle. That's a terrible word for this, but a giant fight with the Cowboys, right? And as I was watching, I was thinking to myself, could they have avoided what happened at any time? And I really don't think they could have. Like they went there as reasonable people, but when you're dealing with these unreasonable cowboys who want to basically rape and pillage and murder their way through the old west, there's no reasoning with them. Like it's obvious from our perspective, they're doing bad things. They know that they're doing bad things, but they just don't give a crap. And it was just interesting watching this with the idea that can we Monday morning quarterback and could the Averps have done anything different? Other than leaving town and leaving the Cowboys to their own devices, I don't think there was anything they could have done to avoid Morgan's fate and Virgil's fate in this one.
So I'm going to push back, not on the
Hmm.
point of them actually having to step in as being law, because that's just how they are. That's who they are. That's what they do, and all that sort of stuff. Completely agree with that. But I'm going to push back just a little bit. Cowboys, we know from movies or we hear that cowboys are like Vikings. Like they just go and pillage and they just rape and they're just bad guys. We see that in movies. But if you look at this, you have cowboys who are basically, like we're not necessarily a gang. We're just a group of people, but you can call them a gang. You could definitely call them that. They did not necessarily go out and like wreak havoc and destroy things. It wasn't like oh shoot, there was a movie that came out a little while ago, and they just made a reproduction of it. I can't remember. But anyways, long story short, cowboys weren't like Vikings. They were just normal people that banded together, and they were definitely a little more rowdy. They were I'm not downplaying how rowdy they were, but they were not just going through the entire like city to city, destroying things and just taking things and being rude and horrible and evil and all that sort of stuff. Now, some were, completely agree that some were, but so if you look at the way the OK Corral played out, the Behan, what was he? It
The
wasn't the sheriff.
sheriff, or
No, he was like the
is he
county
a marshal?
marshal. There you go. He came up, ran up to him, said, "I've already disarmed," and it's a proven. Like he literally told the Earps this. I have disarmed them. Now, if the whole goal was just to disarm them, they would have said, "Okay, we trust that you've disarmed them," and then leave. But they didn't. They kept going, and there were four men there. Two of them had firearms. Two, the other, maybe six men there, something like that. But there was a good amount of men there. Only two of them had firearms, and they drew and they got the gunfight. We know what happened to OK Corral. It only took like 25 seconds, really really short. But what's interesting is because they had a badge. I'm not saying anything negative about police officer or anything. I'm just showing that the police came here, or like the sheriff and all. They went there and they gunned down men that didn't even have firearms. Not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's a fact that they did. Now that turned the tables, not turned the tables. That made us, because the Earps, the law, were the winners as opposed to the Cowboys. We probably wouldn't even hear about the OK Corral. We probably wouldn't even hear about this. America might be a little different if the law was not able to take hold like it did because of the OK Corral. So, long story short, we need to be not necessarily down or up on Cowboys. Just try to have a perspective that Cowboys weren't always bad. Does that make sense?
It does, but I was just referencing what happened in the movie. In the movie, all the guys that they gunned down had weapons, and every step throughout the movie, every little confrontation, I don't think that the Earps could have done anything different to avoid their fate, is what I was saying. Like, I can't Monday morning quarterback any step that they took, other than they should have just gotten out of town at some point. Does that make sense?
That is
Yeah, I'm not
completely
talking about
yes.
historical Cowboys.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I
Mhm.
guess the reason why my mind went there was because of this movie is on historical events, and they were
Yeah.
actually real people. So what I really liked about the movie is, and they did this on purpose. So we could have watched a movie that ended in the OK Corral, and that was the end of it. And a lot of movies they end in the OK Corral because that's what everybody hears about, and that's the pinnacle, that's the culmination of everything. But that was like in the middle, or towards the end of the second act. The third act is when they're literally going and destroying all the
Murder
cowboys.
montage.
Yeah, exactly, murder montage. And then they make the music go lower and lower to make it feel like it's longer and longer. So that was from Team America, if you don't know that reference. But so what was interesting is they had the OK Corral be the middle as opposed to the end. And I really enjoy everything about this movie. I can't think of one point in the movie other than the interplay between Dana Delaney and Kurt Russell. Like that was like, oh, okay, romance thing. I'm kind of like the Princess Bride, Matthew Savage, like, oh, okay, they're kissing again. Let's move. Let's go back to the killing. That's I kind of get, but it really helps you to understand the interplay between them and why Wyatt Earp went off with her and stuff like that. Not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's what he did. But throughout the entire movie is really really fun. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and as I was watching, I was like, man, this is a good movie.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one of the ways, I mean, I give this movie an A right away. It's an A. And one of the reasons for that is leading up to it. Like last week, you had said, we're going to learn from Tombstone. I thought, okay, great. But then when it came time to watch it, I felt like, oh, this is going to be homework. I don't think I'm going to enjoy it. But then as soon as I started watching it, you see Kurt Russell. Well, first you see the Cowboys and how evil they are at that Mexican police officer wedding thing. But then you get to see Wyatt then with his brothers, and then you see I just got into it right away. So it went from being homework to being a super enjoyable 2 hour watch of the movies. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, just like you. I give it an A.
Yeah, for me, I definitely throw it to A plus because I think of so many scenes, so many thoughts throughout the entire, like everything is so well done. Story's so well done. It's shot very, very well. Everything about it. So let me ask you a question. Do you know which gun is called the gun that won the West?
I don't.
So I actually have it. Let me pull it up. So if anybody saw the thumbnail on YouTube, it actually is the 30-30 lever action rifle. So you can see the lever. Let me back up so you can see it. So this is the lever action rifle, and it has literally a lever. So the bullets go inside of right here. So everybody watch on YouTube, you can literally see me doing this. And this is empty. It's definitely empty. So as you pull up the lever, it takes, so this tube, right? So this is the barrel. The top one with the sight is on is the barrel. This is called the magazine. This is where all the bullets get put inside here, up into here, and then the bullets are stored in here. And this lever, that's why it's called lever action, it grabs the bullet out of the chamber, ejects it, and then when you pull it back, it grabs a bullet from the magazine and then loads it in. And so this was amazing difference than the musket. If you think of a musket, it takes you forever to load the musket because you load it from the barrel, the top of the barrel in. You have to put the gunpowder in, you have to pull the bullet in, put the wad in, all that sort of stuff. Actually, it's a different order: gunpowder, wad, then bullet. And so you have to do all that. It takes forever. A good trained person might get like, in 1 minute, might get like 3 shots in 1 minute. But with this lever action, you can get 3 shots in like 3 seconds. And it's just boom, boom, boom. And so this was the gun that won the West. And you see a good amount of them inside this movie, but you do see more of a different type of gun or firearm. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Well, handguns and shotguns.
The shotgun. You see a shotgun a lot more. Now, definitely handguns. Obviously, we don't. We know everybody had handguns on their hips, but they had so many more shotguns that I was like, wow, they're actually using shotguns all the time. But when you think about it, they didn't have like birdshot always inside. You know, birdshot's like little tiny BBs. They literally had slugs, and slugs are like marbles of lead flying out of the barrel and destroying things. And that's why it's very, very dangerous. They're not very accurate at more than like maybe 30 yards. Then it starts to get a little off accurate. Plus it starts to drop. But long story short, this is the gun that won the West. I actually have 2 of these. Excuse me, I hit the microphone. I actually have 2 of these 30-30s. They're really, really fun to shoot, and I really, really enjoy. When I was buying firearms, I was like, man, I got to get a 30-30. Those are so much fun because the first time that I remember it, actually, no, I take that back. Let me ask you, do you remember a movie that has a lever action rifle like this?
I don't know if it's like that, but the first one I can think of is Terminator 2.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. I remember seeing that, him flinging that thing around. I'm like, that is so cool. And that got me learning more about the lever action rifle and everything.
Have you tried to shoot this with that same motion, or is that not feasible?
So it's absolutely not, because look at how long. So here is where so if I flung it here, it's literally going to hit me because the barrel's so long. Now, and it's illegal to do this, so don't do it. But if you cut off the barrel, shorten the tube, the magazine, and do that, then you absolutely can. But then also you got the buttstock. The buttstock is really long, so it's cut off here and then cut off there, so that you actually can do that. But that's illegal if you do that. The ATF or the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms would literally come knocking on your door or breaking it down if you did that.
For sure they would. Man, oh man. So
can you think of any quotes in this movie that you thoroughly enjoyed?
A lot of them came from Doc Holliday. I liked it when Dana Delaney, Josephine's character, first approached Kurt Russell and he turned away and he goes, he said something like, "My Wyatt, you are an oak." That was pretty good. And then later on, Kurt Russell derided himself. "Oh, what an oak you are." Something like, I can't remember the exact
I'm an oak, all right. Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was like. "I'm an oak, all right." Those ones really stuck with me. Besides all of Doc Holliday's lines.
Doc Holliday's lines are so memorable, but there are other amazing, great ones. And one of the most iconic for me, everybody knows I'm a Huckleberry, or I'm your Huckleberry. Everybody knows that. That's because that's like literally when he kills the bad guy. So it's ingrained. He says it twice. One at the beginning, when he actually Johnny Ringo is all drunk and everything. So he says it one time. And the other time is when he actually kills him, when he meets up with him. But another fantastic one, the way it's shot, the the bad guys almost killed his, or were going to kill his wife and Virgil, and when they're on the train, and when they turn around, like he says, "I'm like, hey, where's your brother?" And he says, "I'm behind you," and blows him away. Wyatt Earp blows him away, and then he actually lets Ike live, and he says, "All right, you're like basically Ike. You tell everybody I'm coming, and hell's coming with me." And the way that it's shot, it looks so like it's down looking up at him. You can see like the background almost looks like it's thunder and everything. It's nighttime. Super, super line. It was cool. And then you see the next scene, they're literally riding, they're going after the cowboys. It was so very cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love that scene right there. And that just led into the murder montage or the revenge montage or the reckoning montage, whatever you want to call it right there. As soon as I saw that scene, I just always think about you because I know you're such a fan of montages. I knew Dusty would love this scene right here.
Did you notice? Thinking of not thinking of montages, but I didn't realize until after like watching Armageddon and a couple other movies. I didn't realize Billy Bob Thornton was even an actor before, like during this. I was like, oh, he's just an extra person in this movie. But he did a great job. Like you actually really like, didn't like him when during them. But what do you think about Billy Bob's acting chops in this one?
He was great, man. He showed his just total jerk, bully, kind of potential that he has. He was overweight in this one. So when you see him later on in Armageddon, and I think, like you just said, I think Armageddon was the first time I recognized, like, I knew the name Billy Bob Thornton from that. But yeah, you don't because he was overweight in this movie and just seems like a totally different person. But I thought he did a great job. And then you're right, you absolutely do not like, you despise this guy. You love seeing when Kurt Russell slaps him 2 times, and then sends him on his way. Love that. And then when he comes back, and then Val Kilmer says, "Oh, Terry, I forgot you were there."
I forgot you were there. You may
Yeah,
leave now.
yeah, that
And
was so good.
Billy Bob goes, "For a man not running heels, you sure do go run your mouth." And then Kurt Russell, Wyatt Earp says, "I don't need to go heels to slap the tub out of a fat tubby." Or no, oh man, I know I butchered it. Sorry guys. Like I don't need to
Okay.
go heels to slap the tub out of whatever. So that was really really good. I also remember other lines from Wyatt Earp or Kurt Russell when when Sam, not Sam, the guy from Avatar, what was Ike's, I can't remember his name.
Stephen Lane.
Yeah, Stephen Lang says, "Law don't go around here, law dog." And he says it twice. "Law don't
Yeah.
go around here, law dog." I heard you the first time. They just, oh man, so many one lines from both Kurt Russell, at least the ones that I remember are either from Kurt Russell or Val Kilmer, but then also Johnny Ringo, like just his, who he is and everything about him is just, he's so like almost mysterious. And what's great is that the people around him talk about him, Johnny Ringo, as being a bad dude. So he doesn't have to go around slapping people. As the audience, this is a bad dude. Everybody's talking about him as a bad dude. Steer clear of him. So he doesn't actually have to show that. We know that he's a bad dude.
For sure. Anybody who's willing to cap a priest is a bad guy for sure. 100%. And I really liked what is it, Val Kilmer or Doc Holliday's take on Ringo. Like Kurt Russell at the end of the movie was asking what drives a man like that, what keeps him going on. And basically he just wants revenge on being born. He just hates life. He's just a terrible human being, just doesn't deserve the life that he's given. And I love that take on Ringo. And I really like at the end how when Doc Holliday shows up instead of Wyatt Earp, you could tell. I mean, I can't remember what the words were, but Ringo says, "I got no beef with you," and tried to smile and try to play it off. And he wanted nothing to do because he knew Doc Holliday could kill him. And that was a great
Absolutely.
scene right
And what is great, Doc Holliday walks up and says, "I'm your Huckleberry," and that's when he realized, oh, that's Doc Holliday. And then Doc says, "Why, Johnny, you just look like somebody walked over your grave." I was like, oh, that is so good because
there.
he did look like, and I can't remember the actor's name, but he pulled like his face was like, oh, dang, like I'm gonna die right now, and then everything about it was so good. He's like, no, I was just fooling. Johnny Ringo says that, and Doc, I wasn't. I was like, wow, this is so good. And then when Kurt Russell or Wyatt Earp says, "Doc, this isn't your fight," and he says, "That's a hell of a thing for you to say to me." I was like, oh man, just the interplay between, and interesting to see Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp, their interplay between the two. Oh, it's just, man, it's the characters are so well developed in this movie. Like you just know who they are and how they are. It's fantastic. So there are so many scenes that bring like are in my brain as I think about this movie. What is the number one scene that you either remember or you like the most? Like what's your favorite scene?
Uh Well, geez, actually, well, I wrote down my favorite scene was the gambling hall scene right after the show when, she comes in, he turns away from her, but then you also have the confrontation between Ringo and Doc Holliday. He does all his gun twirling, then he does his cup twirling to kind of like diffuse the situation, but still kind of poke fun at Ringo. That was my favorite scene of the movie. That always sticks with me. That.
That is a great scene, and I completely love and appreciate Doc Holly doesn't have anything to prove. He doesn't care. He's like, I know I can kill this dude. And so he's like, well, whatever. And he gets that cup and starts spinning it. I thought that was hilarious. Now that's more than likely embellished or, a part of the story, which is fun as opposed to actually something that did happen. I don't know if it was, I'm just kind of elaborating, but there are so many great scenes. And even like, I love when Wyatt Earp charges into the river and is just standing there shooting. Obviously, we know OK Corral. That's a fantastic, phenomenally shot scene. But you think about him standing there, and you have everybody shooting around him. He charges into the water, and apparently there was a guy that one of the guys that was in the fight. One of the cowboys was in the fight. He actually lived for maybe like I don't know a day later. He got shot, but he got hurt. We went, and he literally accounted. He said that Wyatt Earp charged into the river, stood there and shot at everybody and didn't get hit. So that was absolutely something that did happen, which is dumbfounding to me that actually could happen.
Yeah, that's a true story then, huh? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. And when you think about the OK Corral as well, there are accounts that Wyatt Earp literally doesn't get razzled under pressure. Like if there's any arguments, any fighting or anything, he is stone cold. And so and they tried their best to portray it. Everybody else in the OK Corral, they were diving, they were getting out of the way, getting cover. Wyatt Earp is just standing there. He's literally just standing there shooting at people. And it was like, wow, this is so he's got balls of steel to be able to do that. And one of my favorite scenes, I would say, is when Ike is you have Ike going to be rushed. Like, oh, sorry, let me back up. So you have Powers Booth, or the guy in the red shirt always kills the sheriff, and then you have Wyatt Earp come up and bash him over the head, getting ready to pick him up, and he's holding on to him, he's going to stand trial. Everybody else wants to kill him right then because he killed the sheriff. But no, you got to stand trial. There's law and there's rules in this, and he's holding him. Then Ike comes up and he says, you can't get all of us, and he literally takes the gun and puts it. If you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, literally the gun is right at Ike's head, and you can see and so everybody's seeing this. You can absolutely tell this is 100% unloaded. It's a revolver. It's literally a revolver, but the gun is literally pointed at Ike's head, and he is Wyatt Earp is stone cold. Said, "Your friend," and then you could and Kurt Russell did a brilliant job of this movie. Your friends may get me a rush, but not until I make your head in a canoe. You got me? And it's like, oh, he's bluffing. No, he ain't bluffing. He killed me. He ain't bluffing. Love it.
That was so good. You could see it in his eyes. There was quite a few scenes just like that between him and Budley Bob Thornton, and then the river scene, just like you said, where you knew that Kurt Russell, that guy does have balls of steel. He is somebody you do not mess with no matter what. But he's also a good person. Like, he won't come up and mess with you like Ringo or Curly Bill will, right? Wyatt Earp does the right thing, but if you start any trouble, he'll be the one to finish it for sure.
He absolutely will. Like he will still be there. Now, what was interesting is there were quite a few Earps. There was I heard that there was probably like two other brothers that were actually in town, but one was like eating, or one was like they were. But yeah, so there were other Earps there, and so back in I don't know the 1800s or the Wild West, kids would die like all the time just because of whatever diseases or whatever, but kids would die all the time. And so people had lots and lots of kids, and they just never stopped having kids. Obviously, if you have a farm, the more people you don't have to actually pay, you have kids that they're actually doing work, you can have more kids. And so that's why we have 4 kids, because I put them all to work. They clean the house now.
Yep. Oh man, yeah, I we only have two boys, as you know, and I couldn't imagine having any more. Man, two's a handful. So
Well, you go from playing man to playing zone. Let's coordinate. You're over here, you're over there. But as they're older, they be much more
yeah.
independent. They do it.
Oh, for
They
sure.
they take care of themselves. But yeah,
Yeah.
so what we've done is instead of us taking care of them, they take care of us. Like I literally don't do any cleaning anymore. It's like get to work.
Mm. Nice, man. Nice. So, let's see. One of the other things we kind of touched on it a little bit was Dana Delaney's character of Josephine, right? And at the end of the movie, they go off. You get the idea that they go off and live a life together. Is that true? Was Josephine like a real thing? Like he left his wife? I guess they said his wife died, right?
It's She died right after they left, or not right after, but shortly after they took off on the
Mm.
train. It says that
Hmm.
they, and you could read it at the very end. It says that she actually passed away from a drug overdose, and you could tell, and that was a
Oh,
theme
okay.
for her throughout the entire
Yeah,
time. Was she was
for
It was
sure.
like opium or something that she was definitely
Well,
addicted
I
to.
looked up when she said, no, she asked about laudanum. I just Googled real quick, what is laudanum? And I guess it's an alcoholic drink made with opium and morphine. So
Yes,
those three things, alcohol, opium, morphine combined, you can imagine really addictive. So yeah, she's going to kill herself at some point
yeah.
with that for sure. But so do you know, was Josephine like real? Was she an actress and came through the Midwest and then he went off and lived with her?
So from what I can tell, from what I've read and seen, yes, absolutely. And they stayed together throughout the whole entire time. They traveled, they did a lot of fun stuff, and that's just how they lived. And it was, and so they try to do their best as far as they can to be true to the story, true to the characters and stuff like that. Even the things that Doc Hollywood would say, Doc Hollywood, that's
Doc
Michael J.
Hollywood.
Fox.
Yep.
um, yeah, so like everything that Val Kilmer has to say or Doc had to say, um, those are things that were actually accounted for. Like him saying, "I'm your Huckleberry," like he's literally said that. Or in the OK Corral, when it was literally stated, or Val Kilmer, Doc literally said, "Well, you're a daisy if you do." If you said, "I'm going to kill you," he says, "You're a daisy if you do." That's literally accounted for. They bystanders literally heard him say things like that. So they tried to do their best. Oh, another thing that was really fun, if you're watching as they're entering into Tombstone, you can see the tombstone, the graveyard. One of them said, like, "Here lies Johnny something or other, 2 shots from a 44, no less, no more." And that was
Yep.
literally on a tombstone back then. And so they said, let's just take that. And if you go to Tombstone now, I believe they have that. And so that's kind of probably got it. But yeah, I think they did a decent job, as far as I can tell, about being as best as they can, true to the story, as well as telling a story and piecing things together.
Yeah. One character who I didn't understand why they were in the story was Jason Priestley's character. What was he? Why was he hanging out with Curly Bill? He obviously wasn't a cowboy, and towards the end of the movie, he was wearing a badge, so he was actually. I just didn't understand what his character was all about. He just felt unnecessary throughout the movie. Out of everybody in the movie, so many name actors and stuff, he was the one that I could do without.
So I did not look into that, but that's a good question. Thinking of what was the purpose of having him in there. Now, if this was a made up story and they literally made up everything and be like, yeah, they was literally had no purpose. It was just for not even comedic effect. Like it just, he was in the scenes for like maybe a total of like 2 minutes is literally
Yeah.
all he's in there. And so, but I wouldn't doubt that that was somebody that was a part of part of the Cowboys. And so I don't know. I didn't look into it, but it seems like it's part of the story, and it's probably just another person, another character that was a part of them.
Yeah, it's interesting. At the end of the movie, or towards the end, when he decides to leave the Cowboys, it seemed like Behan, the marshal or sheriff, whatever he was exactly, he was like calling after him to come back. So I was thinking, like, was he a marshal, like a deputy, like underneath Behan the whole time, but he was always hanging out with the Cowboys, and it was just kind of like a weird relationship between these hoodlums, these bad cowboys, and the marshals. It's like I don't know, like the Marshall Behan allowed them to do their thing, and maybe Jason Priestley's character was just some kind of like deputy that was along for the ride, but I just didn't understand his character basically.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. As far as like storytelling, you don't really get that other than he's like for some reason, Powers Booth's character like literally brings him along and has him with him and all that sort of stuff. Other than that, it's just like, well, he's just like a sidekick kind of.
Yeah. Hmm.
But you got
Gotcha.
Ike. Ike is, oh man, he's somebody that you're like, man, that guy's a coward, and cowards are bullies, and well, not always, but like if bullies can be cowards, and this is one bully that's a coward.
For sure he was. And I would have liked to have seen him. I know in real life, I guess he died a few years later or something after the events in this movie, but I would have liked to have seen him die, especially when he runs away from the fight. Don't shoot me, and then goes in the house, grabs the gun, and shoots him from behind. I mean, come on, dude. He's a terrible guy. He deserved to die, and I would have liked to have seen that on screen.
Yeah, that would have been really interesting, and I really liked for everything from the OK Corral on was also just as good. Now the story was built up before the OK Corral, like where the story was building, and then like it went over that hump, and then it went down and it went to not down, but like you can tell it was like the third act was all about them taking out the cowboys, and I thoroughly enjoyed every single act. And you could tell the low point is where his brothers, like Wyatt Earp's brothers, are literally getting killed or mangled or defamed, or they're trying to kill his women. Like all that stuff was just crazy that they did all that. But in thinking about the movie itself, I really liked how it felt rugged. It didn't feel like a studio. It didn't feel like a production. Like there was poop, horse poop on the street, things like that. Like it felt like you were there. That's why another reason why I love, other than like the acting was fantastic, the storyline, everything was great, but it also felt like they were literally there doing it at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. At no time did it look like they were riding a fake horse on the back of a truck, right? Those actors were really on horses. You knew that they understood how to use guns. I mean, I guarantee they had hours and hours of training. Michael Biehn was there probably flipping guns 5 hours a day, away from the shoot, preparing for this. You knew it. And everybody that they hired, like, they were really tough guys. Like you could see them really in real life. This is how they would have been if they lived back in the 1800s.
Yeah, and so for everybody watching this on YouTube, this is a 44 Magnum. Again, it's always unloaded whenever I bring in. Anyways, it's a 44 Magnum, but this is a two stage. So there's one, two. So there's you pull it back and the hammer stays back here, and then you can pull a trigger and then the hammer closes. Now the types of guns that they have, it was just a single straight stage, so you couldn't actually pull it back and leave it and then pull the trigger. You would have to do it all in one motion, or use like they did. They pulled this back, so it was also all one stage. So that's my next fun gun that I want to buy is a single stage cowboy gun like that. Now, how about you? Yeah, are you gonna? Does this movie make you want to go out and get a single stage or like a cowboy gun?
No. Sorry to burst your bubble, but it doesn't,
Oh no, that's such a surprise. You're such a gun nut. I was like, wow, I can't believe he's saying that.
Yep, gun nut me, that's for sure. Yep.
So yeah,
Paintball gun nut, yeah.
Oh man, yeah, paintball. So everything in this movie it's just so much fun. Now we're wrapping up towards the end. So what's your first lesson?
My first lesson is a tough life breeds tough men. Nowadays, and you mentioned this in our last movie when we talked about Green Street Hooligans, is nowadays there's beta males and there's really weak individuals. Life is too good. I shouldn't say too good, but life is so good for us. We really don't have any problems, especially in the US, that, yeah, it's really easy for you to be really soft in this world, right? But if you think back to the 1800s, you look at these men and just the farmers and everybody in this movie, right? It was such a tough life. You breed tough men, and it's really hard. Like that's why I guess you couldn't get away with anything back in the day. Calling somebody a coward, they're just going to step right up and step to you, right? There's no getting away with anything back in the day. And so when you're dealing with tough men, be ready to be for them to fight back if you ever give them any kind of guff.
The only thing close to a beta male in this movie would be Jason Priestley's character. That's the only thing, but he had to have everybody else around him to protect him from actually getting killed. And so, yeah, I like that. That's absolutely. I saw something. It was rather interesting. I'm probably going to butcher how it goes, but it's like a train of thought. So, hard times breed hard men or strong men. The strong men breed good times breed weak men, and weak men breed hard times. And so it's a circle. It just keeps getting round and round. I'm like, man, that's actually, it's not too far from the truth. When there's good times, we get fat and happy. We get lazy. We get like complacent. And just like in Batman, the last one, where we have Bane say to Batman, "Oh, victory has defeated you." It's like, yeah, when you get fat and happy and you won, you get lazy, you get complacent. When you don't, when you're always battling, you are going to grow. You're going to get stronger, get better. When you fail, you're going to get better. And so, yeah, it's only because of how peaceful everything is right now in the world is that we can't have beta males. Okay, so my
Yep.
first lesson is don't be goaded or bullied into a gunfight or any fight for that matter. Last time we did the Green Street Hooligans, which was a great movie. Go back and listen or watch that YouTube episode or the episode we did on podcast. Great movie. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I was surprised. I've never even heard of it until you, Sky, asked or said we should do it. So don't be goaded into any fight because you never know what's going to happen. I like how in this movie they do get goaded in, but at the same time, the one that I really not a fight necessarily, but into something else was when Powers Booth's character, the guy in the red shirt, the main bad guy, is hallucinating. He's really really bad. He's out in the street just shooting guns, and Behan says, "Oh, hey, this is a city matter. You got to take care of that." And Kurt Russell or Wyatt Earp says, "Why don't you just leave it alone? Like he'll go away. Just leave it alone." And the sheriff says, "No, I got to do something about it." Well, one thing could have been, I mean, the sheriff would still be alive if he just left it alone. Not saying that's the right thing to do, but yeah. And so in general, any fighting, that's why, like with Green Street Hooligans, I'm not like, if somebody gets mad at me and they want to fight me, like if I bump into them, I'm like, "Oh, dude, you're so sorry." And they start getting up in my face. I'm like, "Oh man, hey, I was noticing how awesome those boots were, and I wasn't paying attention, dude. Sorry." And if they really want to throw down, I'm walking away. Like I'm literally escaping because there's no need to get in a fight. I'm always carrying a pistol, and so I'm always going to be able to protect myself and my family. But that's not even an option for me unless my family is literally getting attacked. Then I have that as an option. I'm literally walking away. There's no point in getting a fight. I don't care about my reputation whatsoever. I care about my family and myself. Let's get out of here.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. And going along with that, sometimes you can't avoid the fight, right? And my lesson is you just cannot reason with the unreasonable. Powers Booth, Ringo, the rest, and Ike especially, and Christian Hayden Church, his character, whatever his character's name was, these guys were just unreasonable. They wanted it their way. We knew that we did a bad thing, and you're the law, and you're trying to punish us, but we're not going to allow that. You just can't reason with unreasonable people. So just don't even bother trying, right? Stay away, like you said, or find a good way to handle it.
Yeah, you cannot, especially when they're unreasonable. It's just silly. I agree with that. So, along with the lines of being understanding what like the scenario, like if somebody's unreasonable, you're understanding that scenario. If I'm ever riding a horse and a woman who's not my wife wants me to follow her, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because I know that's probably a bad idea. What I need to do is say and be an oak, just like following Wyatt Earp's the very first time, where he has the pressure all around him. He has people looking at him. Now, when he's in the forest, in the mountains with Dana Delany, and they're on the horses and they ride off, like it's not necessarily something that like he has to stand up. Like he just told Val Kilmer, "I'm going to be an oak," or a duck. "I'm going to be an oak," and he said he had to stand up to it and say it. So yes, I'm never going to ride off in the woods with another woman ever.
For sure, for sure. And that's just exactly my third lesson, right? Just stay away from temptation. If your temptation is women, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be, and you know that partaking in that will put you into trouble, will possibly ruin your life or ruin your family or something, you've got to do your best to stay away, say no, don't put yourself in those situations. And you're right. He did put himself in a pretty bad situation by going off on a ride with her.
He sure did. He sure did. So
Yep.
my last lesson is, well, let me look it up. I completely forgot. Okay. Stand up for your friends and people that are close to you. So and Sky, you know this, but not everybody does. So my best friend literally just passed away like 5 days ago. Well, we went to high school together, best friends, and he passed away. He had a seizure and he passed away, and he's only 41 years old. And I was like, man, life is short. You got to stand up for the people that are close to you. The Bible also says a true friend sticks closer to you than a brother. Like if they literally love you, if they literally are your friends, if there's somebody that is so close to you that you can depend on them and be loyal, you also, and it reminds me of Green Street Hooligans, how we just talked about that movie. Like, it's not just that you can count on them to watch your back. You can also, it's almost even better that you watch their back. Like, that's even just about as good, if not, no, it is better than knowing that somebody has your back. And so, yeah, we need to stick up for your friends. And I remember when Doc Holliday says, when Wyatt Earp says, this isn't your fight, he's all, that's a hell of a thing for you to say to me. Like, wow, that's a good line. Yes, absolutely. So you need to stick up for your friends.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I love how this movie just totally demonstrated it. The prior movie, Green Street Hooligans, demonstrated that as well. Really good life lesson. Let me see here. Oh, what is your prop from this movie?
Oh my goodness. There are so many guns in there that I can't think of the one that I really, really want. Um,
I
let me
would
take it.
take,
Yeah,
okay, go ahead.
you go first. You go first.
Doc Holliday's two, I don't know if you'd call them pearl handled or just white handled revolvers along with his belt. That's what I would take from this movie.
I'm I love those, but Wyatt Earp's long, it's literally like a 9-inch barrel. Like, it's the longest barrel. 7-inch is really long, but it was like a
Uh,
9-inch barrel, like such a long barrel that you can shoot like, I don't know, maybe a mile away. It seems like it's such a long barrel. Now, the reason why, for everybody who doesn't know, the longer the barrel, the straighter the bullet will be because there's more spins. It's more, it's pushed. Okay, no, let me pause that thought. If you, in movies, you're going to see somebody throw a bullet or a bunch of bullets into a fire pit, and you hear of course it's going to go off, but it's not going to be a projectile like a bullet out of a gun. The reason why, it needs that pressure being forcing it in a certain direction, in one direction for a very, very long time, and then it moves and it stops from there. So if the bullet's outside of the gun, it's literally just going to explode and it's going to go and it kind of squib out because there's no more pressure. It's just that one initial pressure, but the longer the barrel, the more accurate the bullet is because it keeps going straight and it gets straighter and straighter. That's why rifles are so much more accurate than pistols because the barrel's longer. So I would have to say Wyatt Earp's belt with all the bullets, as well as his pistol and holster. I think that one is phenomenal.
Good choice right there. I like that a lot. Let's see. Anything else that we failed to mention?
Oh my goodness, I could go on and on. I mean, there's
Oh,
so
yeah.
many good things, but yeah, like even just the scenery, the horses, like it's so for me, absolutely an A plus. What did you? We talk about grades yet? So for me, it's A plus.
A. I give it an A
Very
for
cool.
sure. Totally
What
love it.
what
Gotta recommend it. Best Western.
did you? Because you said it was gonna be like homework watching it before, then it grew. What was your, I guess, perceived grade going into it?
Oh, probably like a B.
Very cool.
Probably. Yeah. But
Good.
it was, over
Good.
20 years ago. Didn't remember all these great actors. You get to experience it. It felt almost fresh watching this again. I was surprised every time a new actor came. Forgot about you, Michael Rooker, Charlton Heston.
Exactly.
I was
Yes.
blown away as I was watching it again. So
Love
love it.
it. Yep.
So, Dust, this movie was your choice. Next week, I want to watch another old classic, a movie that I absolutely love, one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time, Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers. That I remember when that came out. It was like almost groundbreaking in a sense. It was totally different than any other Star Trek or Star Wars. I just remember being totally different for me. So
Yep.
yes, let's do it.
Cool beans. I'm glad to hear that. All right, so Starship Troopers next week, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate your ears and your eyeballs if you're watching on YouTube. You heard everything that we think about Tombstone, but we do want to hear your thoughts. So please go to the show notes page, watchandlearnpodcast.com/Tombstone right there. And just leave a comment for us to read. And of course, we'll respond to you. All righty. Once again, thank you very much. My name was Sky,
And I'm Dusty.
and we will return next week with
Starship Troopers.